Quand je prends dernièrement les propos de Emmanuel Macron,
when I reflect on Emmanuel Macron's recent remarks about Africa, it becomes clear to any conscious African what he truly conveyed and its implications. The general suggests that significant changes in tactics and strategies for French forces in Africa are imminent. Macron's statements essentially confirm this. He openly acknowledged the intent to restructure and maintain a foundational system, and his candor is something we can only acknowledge. For those who might have been deluded by illusions, his words serve as a stark reminder of reality. The reality eventually catches up with the situation. Certain countries will not see a complete departure. Instead, the system is being dissolved and restructured. While military bases may no longer be visible, their presence will persist through embassies and private security companies tasked with safeguarding local societies. Soldiers will remain, but not in the conventional sense, no longer gathering in uniform at bases. This signifies a reorganization rather than an exit. Macron also mentioned adopting a more diplomatic approach towards certain state leaders, granting them a sense of precedence. Announcing the withdrawal or departure of French forces is insignificant to us. What truly matters is taking decisive action. If we seek a genuine break from these imperialist forces, it starts with denouncing the agreements. The example of Chad serves as a clear illustration. They began by rejecting these agreements. Without this step, simply stating that military bases are being removed achieves nothing, as the core issue lies within the colonial defense agreements that have been in place since their signing. Since independence, the real threat is not the soldiers visible at military bases, but the military advisors. These advisors are present in all these countries and remained in Burkina Faso until the end of 2022, before decisive action was taken. These military advisors are tasked with implementing France's policies locally. Their role often involves weakening our armies to ensure France maintains a justification for its continued presence in the region. Under Blaise Compaoré, the French successfully weakened our defences, reducing our sentinels to fighting with sticks, exactly what France desires for our armies. When our forces reach such a weakened state, it leaves no choice but to rely on external intervention. Unfortunately, the Burkinabe army struggled to rid itself of the military advisors. In 2019, following the Apano operation, when the French realized the Burkinabe army still had the capability to counter terrorism, they summoned the chiefs of staff to France for discussions. In 2019, the French instructed the Burkinabe chief of staff to reintegrate military advisors throughout the military structure. While he initially refused, upon returning home, political leaders pressured him to comply. As a result, the military advisors returned to the Burkinabe army, leading to severe consequences. By 2020 and 2021, the army was in decline, with many soldiers deserting due to a loss of hope. The situation was deteriorating rapidly, leaving the military in a state of disarray. This is how the system operates. Military advisors embed themselves within the general staff, army leadership, and training schools, dictating the policies of our armed forces. They decide how many soldiers to recruit, when to recruit them, and what roles they will play. They influence training methods and standards, shaping the army to serve external interests. As long as these advisors remain, true independence is impossible. The army will only appear functional, reduced to performing ceremonial parades rather than being a fully autonomous and capable force. The army may put on a good show during parades, but war reveals the stark difference between appearances and reality. To have an independent and strong military, it is essential to break these agreements. Unfortunately, many fail to understand this. Through these agreements, France selects officer cadets from our nations to train them. However, in most cases, these officers return not to serve their countries, but to advance France's interests. The officers trained in France are not prepared to serve our nations, but to advance the interests of the French state. This became evident during our uprising when many officers in Burkina Faso, trained in France, were immediately contacted and urged to act in alignment with France's agenda. They were reminded that their training was intended to serve French interests. Many of these officers informed us of these communications, and we acknowledged the situation while continuing to move forward. When an officer trained in France returns to his country and tragically dies, either by accident or in battle, France holds a special ceremony for fallen soldiers, often at night. During this ceremony, the officer's name is cited, and it is declared that he died for France. This highlights that they are trained not to serve their own country, but to serve France's interests. Many African nations have numerous such officers, and it remains unclear how many of them are truly patriotic. This is yet another lesson that Emmanuel Macron has reinforced. The African heads of state must step up and lead the fight against imperialism. In addition to that, Macron's remarks were insulting to all Africans. One part that particularly stood out was when he mentioned ingratitude, claiming it's a disease that isn't transferable to humans, implying that African ingratitude doesn't affect him. This reflects how he perceives Africa and its people, as if we are not human in his eyes. Perhaps it is he who lacks humanity, as he fails to recognize the true reality of the situation. If he considers himself human, then so be it. However, if he isn't hated, he should be grateful every morning he wakes up. He should also pray to Africans, because it is thanks to our ancestors that France exists today. He owes us that acknowledgement. In his eyes, we may not be human, but in reality, we are more than human. These are powerful messages he's sending, and while I may be crying for the French, ultimately, his actions serve as a necessary evil for Africa, a wake-up call for those of us who want to rise and reclaim our strength. We cannot wake up those who choose to remain asleep, as the saying goes. Africans must rise and work toward true independence, ensuring that our people experience happiness and freedom. The fight against imperialism is essential, and we must decolonize our minds. We need to consider all these lessons because the world provides countless examples for us to learn from. For those in power, there is no morality. They can label you a terrorist today, but tomorrow the narrative can change. They claim to champion democracy, yet they themselves orchestrate constitutional coups. They speak of human rights while decimating populations elsewhere. Africans must rise and awaken, for the fight against imperialism is ongoing. I urge you to join this struggle, working towards such independence that we become self-sufficient, capable of developing and achieving true happiness, what our people long for. Thank you, and I wish you a wonderful day, a great week, and a very happy New Year.